Hello, friends. Hello, friends. A tradition unlike any other.
Oh, my goodness. In your life, have you seen anything like that?
There it is! Adam Scott, a life changer. Mashed potato!
Here it comes.
Welcome back to the 19th Tee podcast. Just Roots with you for tonight's episode, but I'm going to be joined by a young and up-and-coming Australian golfer by the name of James Grierson. He turned pro quite late when compared to a few other golfers at the age of 26, but he's played all around the world, China, America, and throughout Europe as well. And he's got a great story about some of the battles that he's gone through, both from a golf perspective, but also from a mental perspective as well. So we'll get into James in just a moment. But of course, we do want to thank our good friends at Cobra Puma Golf. Make sure you check out the new Alpha Cats. They are the comfiest shoe that you will get on the market. So make sure you pop into them, put them on your Christmas wish list. In fact, and also to our good friends at the Golf Collective, use the code the19th to get $19 off your managed handicap. So $110, you can play any course you want. It's an absolute steal. So get involved with the Golf Collective as well. Of course, if you would like to donate to my longest day, it's only a week away, 72 holes of golf at Hammersley Golf Club. You can do so by heading on to the website longestday.org.au/fundraisers/the19th tee. We've raised $2,500 of our $3,000 target as a team, which is truly fantastic. You can then jump onto our Instagram and enter the competition to win the Sure Shot 6000 Series Pinlock Laser by commenting the score you think I'm going to shoot closest without going over. So without any further ado, let's get stuck into James Grierson. James, thanks very much for joining us, mate. How's things? Where are you located at the moment?
Thanks, Nathan. I just got to Warragul for this week's Gippsland Super 6 event. So, yeah, pretty excited. We're in an Airbnb. Just cooked dinner and having a good chat with you.
It must be nice to get back into playing golf in Australia, mate. It's been such a tumultuous 18 to 24 months. It must have been nice stepping out over the weekend and actually swinging a club competitively.
Yeah, I think a lot of the boys are just happy to sort of get back. We were lucky. We played 2 weeks of pro-ams in Victoria and New South Wales before that. So it was sort of nice to get the novelty of playing golf again and sort of be ready for when we teed up on Thursday. And look, I had so much fun. I obviously had a bit of an up and down week, but yeah, it's nice to have back-to-back weeks and a busy summer coming up.
Who are you rooming with? Who's in the Airbnb? Is it a quiet house or is it a party house?
I usually travel with Charlie Dan, who his back gave way last week, so he's waiting to go back into Brisbane. But I've got Jeremy Fuchs, who's from Sydney as well, Brett Rankin and Doug Klein. It'll be pretty quiet. Boys are a little bit touchy-feely stuff happening, but no, it's okay.
We've had Brett on the show previously, so you'll have to say good day from the 19th tee, boys. We actually recorded that chat and then it got lost into thin air after we did it. So fingers crossed that doesn't happen to us tonight. We had to get back on.
That's fine. I'll just tell them the good-looking ones stay on there and the other ones get flicked.
That's exactly right. I'm sure that'll roll him up. So you're obviously in town in Warragul for the Super 6. The short format of the game is clearly something that is taking off a little bit more. Super 6 has been around for a while, but Blitz Golf is one obviously that we have a partnership with and clearly that you've got an interest in as well. So that short format of the game is really starting to take off a little bit now.
Yeah. I got to play my first one in how long, which is probably like 3 weeks ago. I loved it. The fact that like you can have families there was kids there on a jumping castle. I played average, so I had a pretty early exit. But no, it's just very nice. I think it's the fact that on a normal golf course, you've got to walk 6 or 7 Ks. But with that one, everything comes back to the golf course. There's music. It's not quiet because someone's putting. It's very cool. Something that's sort of like fastening things up as well, which is nice.
Let's go back to the very start. This is where we normally start with all our interviews. I don't know if the right question is, what's your first memories of golf? That's normally what our first question is to our guests, but you had a bit of a different entry and journey into the game playing rugby at quite a high level.
Yeah, I played golf as a kid, but I'm from like Central West New South Wales, so Forbes, which is like 5 hours away from Sydney. And mum and dad, my pop play golf, and I did a fair bit of that with them. But I definitely love team sports a lot more. I sort of played everything and anything. So like I think I might have been off like 10 as a 16-year-old, maybe a little bit less. But like if I went somewhere else, I'd have 90. So love the team sports. Would have loved to gone in the rugby path. Had a few head concussions, probably a little bit small, and then moved to Sydney. I was actually going to move to Glenelg for a golf college and moved to Sydney instead, and just got hooked. I think being a 20-year-old who just gets the scratch for the first time, who realizes that the game was probably going a little bit in an athletic way, and that sounds very egotistic of me to say I'm athletic, but I think you know where I'm going with that. So it was nice just to put some work in. I sort of thought that, 2 years down the track I'd be turning pro, and then you realize how competitive and deep golf is. So it was nice. I've loved it ever since. I've definitely got the addictive personality, which goes quite well in hand with golf. So it's nice.
What position were you playing in rugby?
I used to play fly half.
Right, a little bit faff de Klerk. Do you get that much?
I used to get a little bit of Barnesy.
You've got
a little bit Derek Barnes.
The golden locks, mate. How did that go as playing as playing rugby? It's not really associated with rugby, the golden locks.
I had to wear a headgear. I think that was sort of the rule with mum as I was a little kid, that I had to wear a headgear. She didn't want me getting bunged up too much, but it didn't make any difference. You still get knocked out with a headgear on.
So you're playing rugby at quite a high level. You played representative rugby for country New South Wales.
Yeah.
I guess obviously you mentioned the concussions side of things, which clearly forced you to, I guess ultimately, did it force you to step away from the game? Was it the concussion side of things, or was it the love for golf that took over, or a bit of both?
Probably a little bit of both. Like I chose, at one point I chose golf over rugby. And then like didn't perform very well, and I sort of was like, this is stupid. I'm doing two things. And I'm probably like more on the golf side, as I was sort of like, cool. And then I sort of woke up on oxygen with mum next to me, and she was like, is this really the right thing to do? So, and then when I moved to Sydney, obviously I still would have loved to, I still played touch footy when I moved to Sydney, and I would have loved to have played rugby, but I was like, what's the point? Like, if you're going to do something, you've got to do it properly. So yeah, then I sort of went down that path, and look, I still love it. I've always said that like, if golf didn't work out, I have to play a game with my little brother, because we never got to, but let's just hope that never happens.
Was it a tough decision?
Yeah, I think you grow up idolizing. I think like if you put general population kids that idolize football players compared to golf, might change a little bit now, but in a country town, very much you live and breathe team sports. So yeah, definitely hard, but I am so happy I did that now.
What's the golf course like out in Forbes?
Tree lined, 9 holes go along the fence. The other 9 holes go inside. It's good actually. It's actually really, really good now. But when I grew up, it was tee up. So there was no grass. To hit a chip shot, you'd try and find a little bit of tough of probably bindies or something like that. But every time I go back now, it's like I'm so proud to be from there, because it's like, yeah, it's amazing now. So it's good.
Are you a bit of the talk of the town when you go back? Everyone knows that James is coming back into town, the big shot that's gone over and played golf internationally.
My little brother says I'm too arrogant to go home. So no, no, I don't know. When I go home, like obviously my mates have a lot of my mates have left. Some are still there, but like I just love seeing family. So it's like go home, see my grandmother, see my parents. I'm quite lucky. They actually surprised me on the weekend and drove to Melbourne to watch me play. So like I'm very lucky in that aspect. But yeah, Forbes is definitely home with the family, and then my mates when I can see them as well.
You were named the Forbes Sports Person of the Year in 2011. So you must be doing
Jeez,
something.
you've done some homework here.
A quick Google search, doesn't it? It brings up a fair bit, mate. Normally, one of the questions that we ask our guests is we go right back to their very first Instagram post and ask them what they were posting because, generally it's a bit embarrassing, but yours is just a leaderboard shot, mate, where you're finishing in the top 10.
I might have done some delete. I think I might have done some deleting before you've scrolled there. So I think I've saved myself.
You might have. So take us through the next sort of steps after you step away from playing rugby. You move up to Sydney. Like, what's the next sort of progression in your career then? Because you turn pro quite late in your, I suppose, as opposed to normally we see people turning pro in that sort of 19, 20, 21. Even younger. You were 26 when you turned pro. So what's that sort of next little middle period like where you're solely focusing on golf?
So I moved to Sydney, I think I might have been end of 18, maybe just turned 19, and did a golf college, Australian College of Elite Golf. It used to be at Bonnie Doon. So I did that for 2 years. And I think like my milestone there might have been like just getting to plus for the first time. I sort of like did some team building events. So I used to run the facilitation aspect of corporate events. So like team building, we used to do a lot of charity stuff. My cousin was the boss. So sort of did that part-time, worked in a bar, did a little bit of laboring and tried to play golf. Obviously, as you can see, like there's a lot of things happening there that you sort of like your time is all over the place. So I did that probably like 3 years and sort of like just got below state level. Went overseas in 2016, played 6 events. I won the stroke play aspect of Northwest Pacific Amateur, which was sort of like probably the first thing I was ever like, yeah, cool. This is like this is what it feels like.
Yeah.
Because I hadn't really contended in anything in Australia before that. I think I had like maybe 12 under par, which for 2 rounds was like such a big PB. And then sort of came home and then played good in Master of the Amateurs. I think I was leading through 2 rounds and then sort of like fell away. But that was sort of like those first 2 moments where I was like, wow, this is what I want to do. I already obviously had those thoughts, but then when you actually have a little bit of success and you get that belief. And then I got into the high performance program, probably more off work ethic and a bit of like right place, right time than probably golfing ability at the time. And then went back overseas the next year. I think I didn't win a match at Interstate. I think I had 2 draws. We lost in the final. Went overseas, come 5th in Wales in Welsh stroke play, and then I don't think I made a cut that whole overseas trip. And I think like we all know that you sort of have to go through those moments to sort of come out the other side. But I tell you what, those were the longest 3 months that I think I ever experienced at the time.
Yeah.
And then and then got into USAM as well and missed the cut by 1. So it was sort of like you have these little moments where you're like, oh, like I'm getting closer. And then it sort of didn't really go that way for the next probably 2 years as an amateur. Got through first stage Q school in 2018. Missed final stage, missed Pro-Am category. So I had nothing. Thankfully, I stayed amateur before that. And then went over to China. It was PGA Tour China at the time, which is a pathway to web.com, and which is now Corn Ferry, and got conditional status there. So I was like, yep, perfect. I'm turning pro for that.
You mentioned before that you were playing off around 9 or 10 at that when you were a bit younger. That's a pretty quick improvement to go from 9 or 10 to all of a sudden going overseas and competing in and winning events. Like, were you just working your ass off at golf during that time?
Yeah.
Or like, how does that happen so quickly?
I was quite lucky in the college that I went to. It was very much something that if you wanted to work, you could put a lot of work in. If you wanted to sort of go there for just the classes that they would give you and the practice schedule they would give you, you could sort of, obviously they would tell you to do stuff, but like you could very easy just do what you wanted, not do anything at all. I didn't like not being good at stuff. So if I couldn't do something straight away, I just sort of like keep going, and then get to a tournament and it wouldn't work. And it's like, okay, so why is it easy on the range, and then why is it when I have to hit a 7-iron to the middle of the green to make a cut, I can't do it? So yeah, I don't know. I think I'm just quite stubborn.
No, that's a good. Ultimately, you know, stubbornness is quite good at times, I guess, particularly in an individual sport like golf. You know, stubbornness is very good. What's it like going over and playing in? Obviously, you mentioned Wales there, but in the States as well. Having played, you know, you're a kid from Forbes, right? You're growing up in the country. You're off to Sydney, the big smoke, and now you're off to the bigger smoke on the other side of the world. The golf must just be completely different from Sydney, but also it must be a world away from Forbes.
Yeah, I think like a couple of weeks, especially in America, like I couldn't get over like how perfect everything is. Like you get on the tee box, it's like it looks like nobody's ever hit a shot off the tee box.
And here's you teeing them up off bindies.
Yeah, I know, as a kid. And then like I remember playing St Andrews, and all the tee boxes off the championship tees are always lowered a little bit, so you can't see anything. I was like, I don't know, like there's nothing to aim at.
Yeah.
So it was just like amazing. And obviously at the time you don't perform well, but after, it's like the best lesson ever to be like, okay, so what can I learn from that? And sort of like USM at Bel Air, there's a lift that goes from the ground at the 18th and the 9th green to the first tee. Like that's just the Playboy Mansion's not far away. Like that's just doesn't even seem real at the time. So those experiences are so cool, and I'm quite happy that I was a little bit probably older, where I could sit back and be like, this is awesome. I'm really going to enjoy that. Obviously being nervous at the same time, but yeah, just those little things where it's like, I don't know, soaking it up and sort of probably didn't have the biggest expectations of myself, because I was definitely somebody that wasn't there in the league to win those events. But at the same time, it's like, this is cool. If I play good, who knows what can happen? So yeah.
How do you deal with that? It's a really interesting point that you raise. I mean, you self-admittedly that you said you weren't there to win them, but how do you mentally tell yourself to get up for a golf tournament if you're sort of thinking, oh, I'm probably not good enough to actually win this golf tournament, but if I play well, I could contend and win? Like how does that sit in your psyche?
It's definitely something I got better at. I guess like we all have that the night before the first round. Like I know I used to go through the holes in my head and like dreaming of having 10 under par and leading and getting nervous thinking about that. Like that stuff is, I think we've all had that as kids and we still have it now. Obviously when you're out there playing, sometimes you'll play with someone and it's like I played with Cameron Champ in one of the events and I was like, this bloke is awesome.
Yeah.
So how do I get like that? So like, what has he got that I don't have? And then it's sort of like, okay, so how can I get closer to that? And just sort of like always having that mindset of like, okay, so what can I learn from today? And then how can I continually get better so that I don't feel like I'm not the best player in the field?
St Andrews, the first tee. We always ask the question when we hear someone play St Andrews. A, how nervous were you standing on the first tee of St Andrews? And B, did you hit the fairway?
I hit the fairway. It was raining. I think my divot was probably 2 foot long. But thankfully that thing's an airfield. If you miss that, like it's very wide. But yeah, very, very nervous. I was lucky a couple of years later to have a couple of pints in the old clubhouse and in the R&A clubhouse and sit there and watch people tee off. And I laughed at them being nervous, then got on the tee again after playing it 4 or 5 times. And I was still nervous. That place is so special.
Having played there and having played in the States and growing up in Australia, I mean, do you align yourself more to the Masters or the Open? Which one do you consider to be the biggest trophy in golf? Or the PGA Championship or the US Open, if you really want to include either of those.
I guess I'm probably going to be a bit of a fence sitter here, but to put on the green jacket or to be called the champion golfer of the year, both. I don't know. There's something about. I think they're so different in that one is perfect, right? The Masters is like everything is like. Perfect's not a strong enough word for that week.
Yeah.
And then the Open's like rustic. You can't see the fairway. There's bunkers everywhere. I think I'd want to win the Masters first, but then I'd definitely take the Open second.
Good answer. I like it. You talk about then, you mentioned you got your status onto the PGA Tour in China there. I guess you've played in Australia, you've played in the States, you've played in Europe, but Asia just seems to be just another level of golf. I think, we don't necessarily hear a great amount of even the Japanese tours or the Korean tours that are going on here, but they are truly mad for their golf throughout Asia, aren't they? I mean, what was that experience like playing on that tour? Because that must have just been something completely different to anything that you'd experienced before.
Definitely. I had never been, I went to Thailand for Q school too. So going to China for the first time I had to Monday for the event. And it's just jungle on both sides of nearly every golf course, nearly every hole you play. So for someone that grew up on a golf course that you can hit it anywhere, as long as you hit it above the trees, I had to adjust to not looking off the fairway, which I found very hard. So I'd feel anxiety that I was going to lose every golf ball in my bag, every time I played golf there. So obviously I sort of said it earlier on, but that year where I played there, I sucked. If I had under par, I was like, this is amazing, because I just felt so uncomfortable. But then now it was the best 6-7 months playing there, because it is Japan, so many of the boys are playing in Japan, and there's they love their golf. I think probably because the land to population value is it's so small. Their population's so high that land is valued so highly. There's not many golf courses, which means that only the rich can play, which means that obviously the sponsor dollars are quite high as well. So it's definitely a pathway for so many guys in Australia because of the time zone and because golf's so big there. You see how many guys go to Thailand for golf trips. China's obviously a little bit different to those golf courses, just through other areas that we don't need to talk about in the podcast. But yeah, it's golf in Asia is massive.
How did you go? I guess the golf is one thing that you mentioned there, and the different, I guess the different types of courses. But how did you go just living in China? A kid from Forbes going over and living in China. I mean, that must have just been the culture shock, I guess, aside from not even the golf. You're going over there and the golfer was almost like, oh shit, I'm here to do a job, but you've got to get yourself set up in a foreign country that you don't speak the language. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but you don't speak the language. How do you?
I said about 4 words. That was bad.
Yeah. So how did you, I guess, just move over there and go, right, this is my life for 6, 7, 8 months, who knows?
We were quite lucky in that we had 2 weeks or 3 weeks on, 2 weeks or 3 weeks at home. But so for anyone that doesn't know, if you get a Chinese SIM card, Facebook Messenger, WhatsApp, Instagram, Safari, all don't work. Mm-hmm. So finding a SIM card in the first place is hard. Finding a taxi finding what they call a DD, which is essentially our Uber, that doesn't take cash, that you need a Chinese bank account to do. Those little things, we just laughed. Yeah. I think I was quite lucky. I traveled with Charlie, and it was sort of how many things can go wrong in a day? So I think when you experience that in the first week, your threshold of who cares? Yeah, let's just go with it. builds up. The food was interesting. We sort of ate at mainly the hotels. We would have loved to have eaten off the street, but if you're there to perform and you're eating food that you don't know if you're going to be sick or not, yeah, I'd probably rather not do that.
Yeah.
We had weeks where they were checking our visas to see if we had the right visas to be there, because they didn't really like us being there sometimes, I don't think. So as far as like experiences, every week there was something new, which is quite cool.
Because you look back at it and go, well, there's no wonder that it was tough to perform, because you were dealing with all this other crap that was going on around you.
The golf's the easy part.
Yeah.
For most.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's for sure. And obviously the idea of getting either to like final stage of web.com, or like obviously the winner got a full web.com card, that's probably the thing that when things are hard, you're like, no, this is worth it.
Yeah. You said you got some level of status into web.com. Is that what you said before, or how did that?
So that's what you would have got if you did play well.
Yeah. Okay.
Definitely that year, I wasn't even close.
So you're into. I'm trying to do my maths right here. 2018, is that right? Where you're in China for a little while.
2019, yeah.
Right.
I got a bit off the path there.
No. I'm just trying to think. We're in almost in the height of a pandemic at this point. Are we? Has COVID kicked off by the time you're there? How's that all panning out?
We played Macau, which is our last event, in maybe October, and then came back here, had our Aussie start of the season, so like Q School, and then I was supposed to be going from New Zealand back to Q School in China again, and that was maybe end of March, roughly. And the week before COVID kicked off, like everywhere else in the world, I was still booking my ticket, being like, no, I'm going to China. I'm going back there. And then, like, obviously, we nearly didn't get back in from New Zealand. So everything quickly changed.
And then I guess our season kind of followed suit, not too far afterwards. I mean, the challenges of the past 18 months, I mean, have been enormous for our homegrown Australian golfers. And I don't want to get too much into this. I'm sure if you've listened to some of the episodes, you know that we've been very vocal about maybe the work or lack of work that the PGA and the Golf Australia have done to get tournaments off the line. But I mean, how does that all work for a guy like yourself who's, I guess, relatively newly pro, only a couple of years into your career, and then all of a sudden it's actually, no, we're not going to be having the opportunity to earn money for a little while. I mean, what did you do at that time?
I guess from my aspect, obviously JobKeeper was quite nice. Like we all got quite lucky in that aspect. In New South Wales, golf courses didn't close. So once again, that was quite lucky as well. I struggled a little bit, and I started like just running, because obviously gyms were closed. So I started just running, got injured, because I was obviously running away from the head noise of like exactly what you just said. Yeah. I've just turned pro in Australia. I've played 4 events, and now there's like nothing we can do. But at the same time, I just started to speaking to mates about that and ways to get around. I sort of sat there one day, I was like, I'm injured. I can't play golf. I can't work. It's winter in Sydney. What can I do that isn't exercise to get what's in my head out of my head?
Yeah.
Because that's sort of, I'm very highly functioning wired. So like I just do stuff to get away from obviously the head noise. So I started speaking to a couple of mates, started seeing a psychologist probably mid to late last year, from the bit of a push from my girlfriend as well. And it is by far the best thing I've ever done. And it's definitely helped me as a golfer as well. Sort of just like, this isn't in my control. So what can I do to sort of make it better? And it's definitely helped, which has been very, very nice.
Do you think that's something that you've maybe dealt with throughout your career as well? I mean, I just picked up before that you said when you were standing on the tee boxes in China, you were having anxiety about losing every golf ball. Is that sort of mental battle, something that you've dealt with over the course of probably a longer career, or maybe even as far back as into your rugby career, or?
Maybe, but I probably didn't know it at the time.
Yeah. So COVID kind of brought it to the fore.
Yeah, because we were sort of like legitimately sitting there doing like nothing, right? Like, you either sort of went down one way or you went down another way. So I guess I was just very lucky that I had certain people around me to sort of talk to, and I could ask questions to that have played high level sport previously, and I just sort of asked a couple of questions and sort of like went down that pathway. And yeah, I'm definitely a much happier, confident person since doing that. And which probably, obviously, we all know what golf's like. It's the one sport that it is just you and your thoughts. So any way that I can control that in a positive mindset is awesome.
And you think that's made an impact on your golf game as well?
Massively, because it means that when you're standing there, you're like, okay, cool. I'm a bit nervous, but like, I'm addressed it, and now let's go hit the shot. Instead of like, why am I nervous? And then all of a sudden you go down that spiral, and then you hit it in the bush anyway.
The ball's gone anyway.
Exactly.
I guess, it's, as we said, it's been an immensely challenging 18 months. You said you got injured there, and then obviously things started to slowly come back from a golfing perspective. Throughout that time, was there ever a thought of maybe going overseas and attacking any of the Q schools in Europe or the US, as we know a number of other people, a number of other Aussies have done as well?
Yeah, I thought, like last year, I sort of sat around and I was like, okay, so next year I really want to do it. And then we obviously played like the start of this year as like a pretty big little chunk of golf. And I definitely got over some hurdles. Like I think I missed the first 7 cuts if you include the start of last year, and then made the last 4 and started to definitely play some good golf. Had to go back to Q school, got over a bad first round and got my card back. But I think I sort of like looked at it and I was like, well, if I stay in Australia, play a full year of Pro AMs, play a full season of Australia golf, and try to go through the top 10, top 5 of the order of merit through our season, like that we're in right now. I sort of looked at it long term and thought that's probably a better way to go about it, instead of spending probably the 6-to-1 ratio of money that you would normally spend, plus not know if you can come home. Obviously, that was a super tough decision because I think we all want to go there. But I was like, well, I think more golf under my belt is not going to be a bad thing at all.
It's great that we've got golf back now in Australia with some sort of security. I guess ultimately we've got a couple of events in the Christmas break, and then we come back and there's some great events on the other side of the year. But what I guess is the short-term goal for yourself for this season, and then ultimately sort of what's what do you want to achieve longer term? Is it heading back to the States? And I guess ultimately you want to put the green jacket on and then win the Open Championship, as you said. So
so this year, obviously, like, just to contend as much as possible, whether it's round 1, round 2, round 3, round 4, just to get as much experience, like being nervous on the golf course. Because usually if you're nervous, you're doing something right. And then finish as high as possible in the order of merit. If that means that I get pathways to go to final stage of Q schools, that's even better. But more than likely, I'll be going overseas probably like July this year. It's just hard at the moment because we don't know when dates are for Q schools. We don't know what Q schools are available. And obviously, with our season being pushed back, some of the Q schools could be when we're still playing golf in Australia. But for this season, I'm definitely putting Australia first, and then going from there.
Yeah, right. So the plan to play all the events on the tour, which is it's really exciting because there's some great new events that have been added. I mean, the TPS, the Player Series, is obviously something that's been lauded, and it's fantastic to have the format that they're rolling with as well. And then obviously there's some really exciting stops on the tour. We might even see you over here in Perth, mate. If we got told
sure.
today, the 5th of Feb is the border comes down.
Yeah, awesome.
The Great Wall of Western Australia. So you'll finally be able to fly. But mate, we thank you for coming on and having a chat. It's been great to chat about your career, obviously the challenges that you've gone through, and your big switch from rugby to golf, which is exciting, and it's turned out really well for you because you are playing some nice golf, and hopefully the rest of the Australasian Tour sees it goes real well for you. And hopefully we'll see you over here in Perth at some point, whether for the WA Open or the WPGA. But best of luck for the rest of the season, mate. And thanks for joining us.
Thanks so much for having me on.